So, I've never seen Shrek before. At least until a few days ago. And the experience was interesting. Let me explain. So, first a little context. I adore animation. I think it's a very underrated art form, especially when you consider that some of the greatest films of all time are animated. Not only is it a wholly unique style of filmmaking, I believe it's a necessary one, and I think it's really unfortunate that so much of animation is dismissed as simply a kid's film. Now, I watched a ton of animation growing up, just like pretty much everyone else, from Pixar to DreamWorks to Disney to freaking VeggieTales. But for some reason, at 21 years old, I've never seen Shrek. Sure, I've seen bits, memes, etc. here and there, but I've never actually taken the time to sit down and watch the movie all the way through. Until now. I guess I should probably get this out of the way first. I didn't love Shrek. It's okay. It certainly has its own charm, but for someone who didn't grow up with this film, there are a lot of aspects that I don't think really hold up for me as an adult. And that's perfectly fine. I'm not here to invalidate anyone's childhood. I actually want to talk more about what I think Shrek does right, especially for me as an adult. So, Shrek is a movie with layers. Yes, that's really cheesy, but let me explain. On one hand, it's very much a kid's film. There's a lot of gross, dumb humor, very over-the-top character designs, which is not a bad thing, and a pretty straightforward, easy-to-follow story. On the other hand, though, Shrek is also a really interesting deconstruction and parody of sorts of classic Disney films. Even more so than just traditional fairy tales. There are a lot of jokes and critiques that would go over the heads of most young people watching this, and they're created to be appreciated by an older and more discerning audience. It's the combination of these two things, though, that I think makes the film difficult for someone like myself to fully appreciate. If you look at a lot of Shrek's more, I guess I'll say mature gags, there's quite a bit to love. It pokes fun at nearly every trope we've come to expect from fairy tale type stories. The king isn't tall, strong, and powerful. The mighty steed is just a donkey. The knight in shining armor isn't even human. It twists everything we know about these types of stories on its head. It's the Last Jedi of animated fairy tales. It subverts our expectation at every turn. Okay, honestly, I feel like at this point, calling something The Last Jedi of whatever is the film equivalent of calling a game the Dark Souls of a particular genre. But I guess I'm gonna keep using it, so sue me. Shrek does more than just poke fun at fairy tales in general, though. It's specifically a commentary on the ridiculousness of the Disney style of storytelling. From the princess singing with birds to the corporate factory/office looking castle, many of the colors throughout the film are also very dull or muted. It's a look at decades worth of popular children's stories through the cynical eyes of an adult. Particularly the first half of this film is dreary and kind of straight up depressing. I can't say I've seen forced relocation and eminent domain brought up in a kid's movie before. Shrek isn't a happy or brave or even charming protagonist, at least in the traditional sense. He's not even on a quest for anything special. He just wants his home back. The movie carries these twists and themes all the way through the end, when we see Princess Fiona, who's fully turned into an ogre, instead of becoming fully human again, as we've grown to expect from a lifetime of similar stories. Shrek's highest points are these moments when it's fully committed to diving into these tropes and twisting them in really interesting ways. The film clearly has a blast doing just that. But for all that it accomplishes in critiquing the Disney movie genre, it doesn't seem to have the same desire when it comes to avoiding the tropes that burden a prototypical kids movie. Yes, ultimately, Shrek is a kid's movie, and I don't fault it at all for that. I mean, there's nothing wrong with telling a story specifically with children in mind, but that also means your film might not hold up as well over time as, say, many other classic Pixar or DreamWorks films have. Again, I don't mean to dish Shrek super hard, and I don't mean to sound like some Pixar fanboy. DreamWorks has made some of the greatest animated films of all time. I love How to Train Your Dragon, and Kung Fu Panda 2 is one of the greatest modern animated films. Why have these films aged so well with me into adulthood? Probably because I grew up watching these, but also because I think these films have genuinely great writing in addition to still appealing to children. And Shrek, as clever as it can be, falls into using lazy, gross jokes to appeal to its youngest audience members. And it's a shame, because so many aspects of this movie are really quite good. And by the end, you can clearly see a lot of the heart Shrek has. Underneath the hard, crusty layer of adult cynicism is a warm, heartfelt story about loving people for who they are, flaws and all. It's a story about sticking by your friends, even when they don't deserve it. About not judging people based on who we think they are, and instead on who they actually are, and how, as life goes on, things don't always work out the way we thought they would. In fact, they almost never do. But often, where we do end up, as bumpy as the ride to get there may be, is often far better than we could have ever imagined. Watching this movie that I know so many people have just an enormous amount of love and nostalgia for that they've carried through their entire lives was kind of a strange experience for me. I don't have the same love and nostalgia that people have for Shrek. I don't have a place in that bond of shared experience that millions of other people have together. And that's not a bad thing. We all have unique memories from our childhood that we share with that select group of people that also have that experience. It's just weird to watch the exact same thing as so many other people around me from a perspective that really couldn't be any more different. So again, I'm not telling anyone how to feel about this movie. This is just how I felt about it from my weird, ignorant perspective. Shrek is by no means a bad movie. It's an onion. For some dishes, it's perfect. It's just not for every single one.